Back in the early 1800s and late 90s, circuses didn't just present talent. They put real people on display. These weren't monsters or myths. They were real individuals born with features so rare, appearances so jarring, or conditions so extreme that crowds couldn't look away. Some were celebrated, some were exploited, but all were unforgettable. From twisted limbs to bodies that challenged basic biology, these are the 15 bizarre circus freaks you won't believe actually exist. Number 15, Lobster Boy. In 1937, Grady Styles Jr. was born in Pittsburgh with ectrodactyly, which, if you don't know, is a rare condition that causes his hands and feet to look like lobster claws. The Styles family had carried this condition since 1840. His father, who was a seasoned sideshow performer, brought Grady into the act at age 7. Known as Lobster Boy, Grady captivated crowds with his upper body strength, despite needing a wheelchair. He married Maria Teresa Herzog, and 2 of their children inherited the same condition. But behind the scenes, things turned dark and drunker. Alcohol turned Grady violent. In 1978, the night before his daughter's wedding, he shot and killed her fiancé. He confessed, but was given probation because no state prison could accommodate his disability. In 1992, Maria and her son from another marriage hired 17-year-old Chris Wyant to kill him. Grady was shot dead in his home. Some say he got what he deserved. Others say he was a broken man, destroyed by fame, addiction, and a brutal life under the tent. Number 14, Animal Freaks. Well, freak shows weren't just about people with bizarre conditions or weird appearances. Some focused entirely on animals. In 1908, one show advertised 25 animal oddities, including a cow with 2 sets of udders, a 6-legged bull, a 4-legged duck, and a lamb with 1 head and 2 bodies. These creatures, usually born on farms, often got attention from local newspapers. Once word spread, brokers would show up and offer to buy them. After that, they'd be sold to show owners, who often treated them well, knowing how valuable they were. These animals weren't altered or faked. They were born that way, and many became main attractions. Some even got names and loyal audiences. While modern critics look back with discomfort, these displays were once seen as wonders of nature. Many showmen treated them with care, knowing their worth wasn't just shock, it was curiosity. To audiences of the time, they weren't just sideshow acts. They were natural mysteries, shown to prove just how strange life could get. Number 13, General Tom Thumb. In the 17th century, the name Tom Thumb belonged to a legend, a young boy as small as his father's thumb. But in the 1800s, P.T. Barnum turned that myth into reality with Charles Stratton. Born in Bridgeport, Connecticut on January 4, 1838, Charles stopped growing after 6 months, reaching only 25 inches and 15 pounds. At age 4, Barnum discovered him and offered $3 a week to perform at his museum. Renamed General Tom Thumb, Stratton became Barnum's most famous star. Barnum created a mythic backstory that he was brought from England at great cost, which made audiences even more curious. Charles mastered comedy, dancing, and impersonations, charming royalty and commoners alike. His Napoleon act became legendary, earning him fame with Queen Victoria and President Abraham Lincoln. Later, he married Lavinia Warren, a fellow little person, in a wedding celebrated worldwide. Stratton turned a perceived limitation into immense success and died a wealthy, respected man in 1883. Number 12, Celesta Geyer. Celesta Geyer, or better known as Dolly Dimples, earned fame and fortune as the world's most beautiful fat lady. Her weight rose dramatically through childhood, 150 pounds by grade school, 300 after high school, and eventually over 400. In 1927, after her husband lost his job, she joined the Happy Land Carnival. Standing under 5 feet tall, Dolly's weight reached 555 pounds while performing with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. She embraced her image, calling herself Jolly Dolly, using humor and charm to captivate audiences. Her career ended in 1950 after a severe heart attack. Determined to recover, she adopted a strict baby food diet, losing 443 pounds and earning a Guinness World Record for fastest female weight loss. She later wrote a diet book promoting moderation and lived until 1982. In 2014, she was posthumously inducted into Coney Island's Sideshow Hall of Fame. Dolly turned hardship into art and art into strength, reminding everyone that joy can outweigh every single judgment. Number 11. Clementine Delay. Clementine became France's most iconic bearded lady. She grew up in Lorraine, near the German-Swiss border, and had visible facial hair by adolescence, which she initially tried to hide. At 20, she married a local baker, and they ran a cafe together. In 1900, when a carnival came through town, Clementine saw their bearded lady and said she could grow a better one. She did exactly that. The couple renamed their café Le Café de la Femme à Barbe, the Cafe of the Bearded Woman, and began selling postcards of Clementine behind the counter. Interest grew quickly. She started touring across Europe, appearing in museums, cabarets, and circus shows. She even refused a U.S. tour offer. In 1934, she published her memoirs. Clementine turned something people called a flaw into her image, career, and strength. She never chased shock value or played victim. She wasn't as world famous as Annie, but no one who met her ever forgot her. Number 10. The Human Worm. Among circus legends, few were as unforgettable as Prince Randian, often called the Human Worm, the Human Torso, or the Snake Man. He was born in 1871 in British Guiana, and Prince Randian had tetra amelia syndrome, no arms or legs, only a torso. Clothed in a striped suit, he performed under P.T. Barnum's show, astonishing audiences as he rolled, painted, lit cigarettes, and shaved using only his mouth. He spoke English, French, German, and Hindi fluently, adding sophistication to his act. Before his performing days, Randian married a woman named Sarah and fathered 4 children: Mary, Elizabeth, Wilhelmina, and Richard. The family eventually settled in Plainfield, New Jersey, where he performed for decades. Despite being displayed as an oddity, he carried himself with pride and humor. In 1932, he appeared in Todd Browning's cult film Freaks, sealing his place in history. Prince Randian's life proved one truth: disability didn't define his ability, and his strength wasn't in limbs, but simply resilience. Number 9. Melvin Burkhart. Melvin Burkhart was born in 1907 and became a true sideshow legend. Calling him a giant in the field might confuse things. Literal giants also worked those stages. I've hesitated to write about him since many friends knew him personally, and I didn't. But leaving him out would be worse. Burkhart is most known for inventing the human blockhead act, driving nails, spikes, and even drills into his nose. That act was inspired by a boxing injury that left his nasal cavity permanently altered. But he wasn't a one-trick performer. He mastered fire-eating, sword-swallowing, contortion, escapes, you name it. He was born in Atlanta, raised in New Orleans, and later moved to Louisville. He joined Mr. Leroy Easter's traveling family circus in 1927 and went on to work with Ringling Bros, Ripley's, Hubert's Museum, and the 1939 World's Fair. For decades, he toured with James E. Straight's show. He spent his final years performing at Coney Island, where he's now honored in the Sideshow Hall of Fame. He was the strangest man. Number 8. The Ohio Bigfoot Girl. Fanny Mills didn't blend in. Her legs made sure of that. She was born in the 1860s and had Milroy's disease, which is an extremely rare condition that caused severe swelling in her lower limbs. Her feet grew to monstrous proportions, nearly 20 inches across, forcing her to walk with help and wear shoes custom-built to handle the weight. Rather than hide, she leaned into the spotlight. She toured America under the name the Ohio Bigfoot Girl, drawing huge crowds who came to gawk at her boots and leave in disbelief. Reporters followed her from town to town. The photos were unmistakable. Fanny eventually stepped away from the stage, settled down, and married. But her condition likely contributed to her early death in 1899. She didn't become a household name, but she didn't need to. She stood, visibly unashamed, at a time when most would have disappeared. Fanny wasn't a curiosity. She was a force. Her story isn't about feet. It's about refusing to walk away from the world's stare. What do you think about her? Let us know. Number 7. Cialo, the Seal Boy. Stannislaus Barren was born in Pittsburgh in 1901. His underdeveloped arms, caused by a condition called phocomelia, weren't due to chemical exposure, as often claimed, but a genetic disorder. Phocomelia later became widely linked with thalidomide, a drug that caused severe birth defects in over 10,000 children during the 1950s and 60s. Stanley was reportedly first spotted selling newspapers before gaining a place in nearly every major American sideshow and dime museum. As Cialo, a name referencing seal arms, the literal meaning of phocomelia, he performed everyday tasks using customized tools and sheer creativity. His presence left a strong impression. While touring with Ward Hall, Cialo bonded with a chimpanzee that once defended him from hecklers. For orthopedic comfort, he stayed in hotels instead of circus grounds, and no one questioned it. In 1972, he helped repeal a Florida law banning disabled performers. He retired in 1976 and passed away in 1980 after a respected 30-year career marked by skill, dignity, and quiet power. All right, guys, now let's head over to number 6, Pickled Punks. The name sounds like bad horror fiction, but pickled punks were all too real. Preserved human fetuses, stillborn, aborted, or otherwise malformed, were sealed in jars of formaldehyde and displayed as attractions. Their purpose? Some called it science. Others called it a spectacle. They sat on shelves behind velvet curtains, in jars lit by flickering bulbs, equal parts curiosity and discomfort. These specimens weren't exclusive to the circus. European kings collected them centuries earlier. Naturalists like Ulisse Aldrovandi stored thousands, each tagged, cataloged, and explained. But in the sideshow world, explanation wasn't the point. Reaction was. People came to stare. Maybe they felt pity, maybe awe, but mostly they couldn't look away. That was the trick. These weren't props. They were people, frozen in time, trapped in a glass prison, and they sold tickets. Pickled punks weren't just the circus's darkest attraction, they were its quietest scream. There were no special tricks, and there was also no stage banter, just silence, floating in chemicals, while the crowd tried to decide whether to feel or forget. Number 5. Cloudo, the Mechanical Man. A fast way to earn money in freak shows was to act like a robot, or a so-called mechanical man. One of the most popular acts in the early 1900s was called No Name. The performer was described as a human-shaped figure whose arms and head mimicked the precise, jerky motions of a well-dressed gentleman under machine control. Electrical cords were attached to his back, and a woman, supposedly his operator, joined him on stage while he moved expressionlessly. The promoters even offered $100 to any young woman who could make him smile. During a publicity stunt in Washington, D.C., he was invited to perform on the Treasury steps for the war-saving stamp campaign. There, he tumbled dramatically down the stairs, then stood up, completely unhurt. Newspapers called him It. Onlookers insisted no human could survive such a fall without injury. That was the point. They believed he was a real machine, and for the crowd, the illusion was all that mattered. Well, back then, people were pretty simple. Number 4, Martin Lorello. Now, guys, his one really turned heads, we mean, like literally. Martin Lorello, known as the Owl Man, had a freakishly specific ability. He could rotate his head a full 180 degrees and stare directly behind him without turning his shoulders. No tricks, no gimmicks. Years of extreme training, combined with a rare spinal condition, allowed him to dislocate vertebrae on command without lasting damage. Unlike typical contortionists who had multiple stunts, Martin focused entirely on this single move, and it worked. Audiences froze the second he turned. Lorello became a regular in sideshows and theatrical circuits, always delivering the same disturbing act. Doctors were baffled. Spectators couldn't stop watching. The movement looked impossible because for almost anyone else, it was. He never reached the fame of circus headliners, but no one forgot his face, or the back of it. His act was simple but eerie, and that's what made it work. There was no build-up and no props, just a man calmly staring where no human eyes should be. Number 3, Daisy and Violet Hilton. Daisy and Violet Hilton entered life joined at the pelvis in 1908, born in Brighton, England. Their mother left them behind. Their caretaker, Mary Hilton, didn't raise them. She trained them. By age 3, they were already on stage. After Mary's death, her daughter and son-in-law took over, controlling their careers, money, and movements. By the 1920s, the Hilton twins had crossed the Atlantic. In America, they danced in vaudeville, sang on burlesque stages, and starred in cult films like Freaks and Chained for Life. They eventually won a lawsuit for their independence in 1931, but it didn't come with stability. Interest faded. Audiences moved on. In 1961, their manager ditched them at a North Carolina drive-in. Out of options, they took jobs bagging groceries. Years later, after missing shifts, they were found dead. Daisy first from the flu, Violet shortly after. They were conjoined in body, exhausted in spirit. Their legacy isn't a show. It's the quiet bond of two women who never had space to be apart. Now, let's move to number 2, the Man with Two Faces. Sam Alexander, known as the Man with Two Faces, wasn't born with a disfigurement. In his 20s, while chasing a career in theater, a serious accident changed everything. Most sources say he struck a match near gasoline and suffered severe burns to the lower half of his face. Multiple surgeries followed, but doctors said reconstruction would take at least 15 years. Emotionally devastated, Alexander withdrew from the public. Later, a young surgeon built him a lifelike facial mask, which allowed Sam to re-enter society. He took his pain to the stage, performing with acts like Ringling Bros, Barnum and Bailey, and Clyde Beatty Circus. His show involved narrating his own story, then removing the mask during the finale. Eventually, he launched his own sideshow. Even after further surgeries, he kept the mask on. He passed away in 1997 from natural causes, remembered by his community not as a gimmick, but as someone who turned survival into something worth watching. All right, guys. Now, let's end this journey with number 1, Captain Fred Walters. Fred Walters lived by discipline. A soldier in the British Army, he followed every command, every treatment, until one prescription changed everything. A silver compound in his medication began to tint his skin blue. By 1891, the transformation was permanent. Unable to continue service, Walters turned to the American sideshow circuit. His unusual hue drew stares, laughs, and endless whispers. He accepted the name the Blue Man, wearing his condition like a uniform. What few knew was that the silver continued poisoning him, silently corroding his body. For more than 30 years, Walters toured across the country. His color deepened, his health declined, but the stage remained his only refuge. In 1923, the metal reached his heart. He died alone, far from home. Some called his life brave, others tragic. But really, it was survival. A man who obeyed every order until life gave him one he couldn't undo. If you've enjoyed watching this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for hanging with us, and we'll see you soon.